All right, thanks everyone for joining us. Sorry it took a couple minutes. You know, we Zoom has several platforms, and I think this one was set up as more of a town council format where there's more of a structure, whereas we want this to be casual and inviting and allow everyone to speak and be heard and be seen and all those things if they choose. See if we have anyone else waiting. Okay, we're 5 minutes after the hour. I think we can get started. So yeah, thinking back, this is, I think, our fourth meeting. And so hopefully getting to some consensus on the various issues. I know we've made some progress along the way, so happy about that. But yeah, you know, pretty shortly, we do need to kind of ramp up into design. So hoping to resolve kind of any outstanding issues we can today as much as possible. Maybe real quick introductions. I'll introduce myself and our traffic consultant. So RJ Suko, Department of Public Works Director. David.
Hi, I'm David Parisi, traffic engineer working with the town.
Great. I guess I'll follow my screen, but Susan, you're in the top left of my display.
Okay. Susie and Rick here. We're at 30 El Camino and have actually 2 grandchildren who are with us a lot who use the neighborhood. So we're very concerned.
Next, my screen is Nancy.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I live next to Susie and Rick at 34 El Camino.
Great. Yvonne?
Yeah, so Yvonne and Tony, we are at 6 El Camino. So we are the house that is really impacted by this. And so that's why we're on the call, so that we can work with our neighbors to see what the best possible outcome could be.
Okay. Emily?
That was who's talking.
Mhm.
Face was down. Okay.
Oh, still on mute.
Saying very clever things. Sorry. I'm Emily. I live at number 10. I'm right next to Yvonne and Tony, and I have a son that's about to start first grade.
Okay. John.
Yeah, hi, I'm John. I'm at 18 El Camino. We've got 2 sons who are 9 and 7. So, you know, we want to have them out and about independently more. And this is going to be really important to us. So just wanted to call in and listen.
Great. Bennett?
I'm actually on the other side of Corte Madera. This is the, I think, first Corte Madera town meeting I've attended, but I was interested kind of in the traffic calming that's going on around the town.
Great.
And wanted to comment.
Excellent. Thanks for joining. Bobby? Bobby, you want to, oh, there you go.
There we go. Hi, sorry about that. Bobby Simon, 9 El Camino, 3-year-old and a 7-week-old.
Great. Okay, Shiva.
Hi everyone, I'm Shiva Jensen, 38 El Camino. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old.
Great, and I believe that is everyone. So thank you. Sounds like other than perhaps Ben, I think everyone else has joined us prior. So I won't spend too much time recapping, but you know, obviously the goal here is, you know, we have a road resurfacing project throughout the neighborhood scheduled for next summer, so summer 2022. As part of that effort, we kind of tend to look at things such as any opportunities for bike ped, safety improvements, you know, minor drainage improvements, all those other things. But today we're here to talk about kind of that bike ped component and probably more specifically the ped component. So in previous meetings, we kind of talked about some of the overall, you know, larger overarching kind of striping modifications that we think will reduce speeds. And at the last meeting, we talked about several intersection improvement alternatives for Estrada and El Camino. You know, my takeaway definitely from that was that we looked at what we had were bulb outs and splitter islands as two strategies, and probably a good time to share my screen here. And my takeaway from that was that we kind of all concluded, or the consensus was to go with the bulb out approach. So let's do a quick share screen here. Can you all see my screen?
Mhm.
Right, so this was the splitter island option, right? So kind of using medians in the center to break up the crossing distance, at the same time kind of get cars to slow down to kind of get through these narrower chutes. This is kind of where we landed to go with more of a bulb out approach, which also does a similar thing, narrows cars, slows them down, brings bike or pedestrians out into more visible areas before they enter the roadway. And then here we have kind of a southern, south crosswalk option and a north crosswalk option that we'll definitely discuss in more detail. Here are some of the existing conditions. This is nothing new. You've all been there, lived there. So I don't think it's a big surprise there. But some of the strategies we're bringing an edge line to kind of narrow the roadway through here, possibly some painted choker islands to also kind of focus cars and slow them down as well. And we think that would be a very effective. And then also narrowing it and bring them off the curve here to slow them down as well. Since the last meeting, I've asked our transportation consultant, David Parisi, to just kind of do a quick look at the parking, because I know that was one of the discussion points at the last meeting. So I'm going to introduce that, but then ask him to chime in a bit. So here is your kind of existing condition of available parking indicated by the green boxes here. We do have some red curb kind of in this area, but as discussed at the last meeting, red curb, even if it's not painted, does apply to intersections. You don't want to park at an intersection that kind of can get in the way of sight lines and just turning movement. So there's kind of some de facto no parking zones not indicated by red curb.
RJ, can I add something to that too?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's also a guide from the state that we follow that's to provide, to enhance safety, and it's called the California Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And according to this document, which is really important, it highly recommends, it says that we should not allow parking within 20 feet of intersections or crosswalks. So ahead, through, or behind the immediate intersection. And the reason for that is pretty obvious, because of sight lines, for people taking a turn, or if there's a pedestrian crossing, or a car moving out from a side street. So what's allowed today is not what I would recommend, and that is that people could actually park right up to the intersection. Now, I've rarely seen it except in a couple places at this intersection, but what we show in green are the spots that do not have red curb. So one could, technically park in those areas. But if nothing else, as a traffic engineer, I'd be recommending within 20 feet of the intersection to make it a those areas no parking zones.
Great, thanks, David. Yeah, and then so the manual on uniform traffic control devices is really the document nationwide that speaks to that traffic control devices such as signs and other features. So thanks for that. And then David, do you want to walk us through kind of what you saw as you looked at parking with respect to this bulb out configuration? And I know here we're showing the southern crossing, but also the northern one that could be here.
So we talked about different options with medians and with the curb bulbs. This is the curb bulb option. We also discussed the potential of a crosswalk across the north side of El Camino and then also across the south side. I heard consensus from the community about if you're going to put a crosswalk across the street, it should likely be on the south side. Either option would look very much the same, where the curves would extend. And so both options would have the same effect on parking. And you can see if RJ, if you toggle a little bit back and forth between the previous drawing and this one, you know, what we are showing is what would be consistent with that 20-foot rule that I was discussing previously. And that is, we would not allow parking within 20 feet of the intersection anyway, with or without a curb bulb. But certainly we know that some folks are very sensitive about the public on-street parking. And we feel just from a safety standpoint, visibility standpoint, and traffic calming viewpoint, it makes a lot of sense to just restrict the parking right immediately at the intersection.
Thanks, David.
And again, it'd be the same under any of the options, median or curb bulb, south crosswalk or north crosswalk. We're seeing the same effect.
Yeah. One other thing that we looked at, because I know there was kind of a discussion about, you know, the benefits or advantages of the north crossing versus south. So also took a kind of quick look at the sight lines on that. Let me show you one other exhibit here. Give me 1 second. All right. So this kind of goes to show, so imagine you're driving, you know, you could be driving this direction and you're in the driver's seat, so you tend to be closer to center line. This is kind of your line of sight here. If you were to see a pedestrian entering the crosswalk on the southern side, whereas same thing, that's the line of sight if you were to see them entering the northern. Likewise, coming from the other direction from Paradise Drive, here are the sight lines here are the sight lines there. So, you know, what you see is there are some potential for some obstructions here on this configuration for the northern crossing. Now, I think both are a reasonable design, but I think last time we were kind of getting into those details and kind of starting to really drill down on one versus the other. And I see a hand raised. I'm gonna go ahead, Bobby.
Hi, I'm feeding a kid, so I've got mute on. What's I'm not feeding her, Dave. I'm just got a pacifier. What's the reason why we don't have a three-way stop here, like 3 stop signs instead of just 1? I think that would slow traffic down too. And then I'll go back on mute. Thank you.
Yeah. So we've covered that. I think, if not 2 of the last 3 meetings, maybe all 3 of the last meetings. It's based on that.
Apologies then.
Yeah, no problem. No, I'm happy to recap just because I think it's good information to just share and just, it's not always intuitive, but it is based on the guidance from the manual on uniform traffic control devices. They really, you know, there's negatives to putting stop signs everywhere at every intersection. You know, over time, they just become ignored, and based on decades of studies, information, actually, by doing so, you likely would have more accidents and less safe conditions. And David, anything else you want to elaborate on that?
You're right. It's that same guide, which is very based on a lot of research. This is an intersection where Estrada doesn't have equitable volumes as El Camino. And so what we probably see is people driving up and down El Camino without, you know, with lots of gaps where there's very little traffic on Estrada. So there could be less adherence to the stop control, a lot more folks rolling through the stop sign. So the manual uniform traffic control devices really requires us to look at the volumes, do a warrant study. This would not meet it. This would not meet the guidelines.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. I honestly don't mean to distract
It's a great question, and it comes up a lot. And I also want to add one more thing. It really wouldn't, it would slow down people at the intersection, But people, when they see a stop sign, they'll try to make up for lost time somewhere else. So it's not a really good traffic calming tool either.
And Bobby, it's not a silly question. It's just,
No, a
it's
good
not
question.
it's not a intuitive thing. And it's just kind of one that, you know, we've all grown to understand and learn through our, you know, what we do for a living. So I believe that's kind of the basic introduction, and you know, I'm happy to dive into any more details. But right now, maybe I'll come back to kind of regular meeting format, and we can just go around with any questions or comments and see where this goes. Go ahead, Susan.
When I was looking at that sight line, that was really important to me, because when I was out there looking, I thought, well, you really can't see the northern crosswalk. When people are on the southern crosswalk, you can see them much easier, because I think they have to get, I mean, you said they can look across, but if there's like any tree hanging down, or if there was a car parked even on the other, at the very end where you can, in front of Emily's house, it's so much easier to see somebody at the southern crosswalk. So I feel like that's much safer.
Thank you.
It's on here.
Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So I think the map is very important. If you don't mind showing it again, RJ, because when I talk to the neighbors, I don't think we're very clear, but it's clear to me when I see this map now that what this layout and outcome will look like. I think we all agree, because many of you have young kids on this block, that we need to slow down traffic. And when we moved here 10 years ago, we all agree that, but nothing was done. So we're all for a crosswalk. It's just the decision today really is, where do you put that crosswalk? So RJ is showing on the right-hand side is what we call the southern, right? And then the left-hand side is called the northern. So when you look at this drawing here, is that what I hear is the town of Corte Madera has deemed that both options, north and south, are deemed safe. They meet the safety requirements. So really today's discussion, I think, is about what impacts most with a northern or southern crosswalk, right? That's what we're here to talk about. And that's where you want to get some input, is that either way is safe. The town has already done their research. Is how does this impact the neighbors? How does it impact the homes that are around each of these crosswalks? And if you look at the picture to the left, I'm at the red house with this red roof, we should say. It really severely, probably my house is probably the only house on this block that impacts the most out of these two designs. And you can see on the right-hand side, you can't see my arrow, but on the right-hand diagram, it goes direct into my bedroom, my master bedroom. It is the quality of life that we're talking about. And so that's why many people don't understand, is because they don't live here. They don't live in this property. They don't live on 6 El Camino. They don't know what kind of impact this has on us. Yes, I agree. I have children. I understand we need a crosswalk. We need to find a way to slow down traffic, because the people who come in here don't live in the street. They go to preschool. And I'm all for a crosswalk. But what I'm saying is that what is the biggest impact when we look at this? Both options are safe. The city doesn't have a problem with either sidewalk, north or south. Is really with neighbors, is we need to discuss how does it impact the other neighbors that we live with in this community. So I think that's where I can go on and on to tell you where that impact is. I'm in a lose-lose situation when other people are gaining. When you're thinking about this scenario, I lose the only parking space. And you see, David already mentioned, either option, you're losing this parking space. 10 years ago, we didn't sign up for this when we moved into this neighborhood, right? I mean, nobody wants their parking space being removed. That is the only parking space I have in front of my house. Not only that, you have an ADA compliant crosswalk. These are bumps, the yellow bumps. Every time a wheelchair goes through or a bike goes through, I get the brunt of the noise. My bedroom is right there. When I open the window and open the
That's-
blinds.
Oh, that's the only bedroom window we have in that master bedroom. So we just, all we need to do is just stand up and we can see clearly out there. So, and if we do like to open the window from time to time when when there's not a lot of traffic, not during the traffic hours, so that it doesn't have so much smoke coming in, but we have to open a point. And so we're talking about what kind of life after that. Are we going to be able to, what we used to before?
The problem is that we can't even sleep. I mean, right now, we don't, I hear, because my house is right where the
So
stop sign.
we just want,
Hold on, the stop sign area is, I even hear kids on Friday night. I can't sleep. This is where they meet up. Crosswalks are where people meet up and mingle. And it's right where I sleep. This is right where my bedroom is. And so I don't win anything out of this either crosswalk, but I'm stuck. It's either north or south. The northern end is the one you see on the left-hand side of the screen. It is basically 5 footsteps away from the southern. If we're talking about safety, they both meet. Then for me, it is severely impacted living in this property.
Anyone else want to share any thoughts? Bennett, go ahead.
So my apologies if this has been mentioned before. I was wondering, this is sort of addressed to David, I guess. Has the committee considered raising the crosswalks to curb level so that there's no dip down for pedestrians into the streets? And then also it would function as a speed bump for cars to slow them down in that way, in addition to the bulb outs?
Do you want to take that, or?
Yeah, I'll take that. Well, so
Talk about the speed bumps.
yeah, I want to. Early on, there was a dialogue about speed bumps. I think in probably meetings 1 and 2. There's pros and cons of both. They tend to be, for one, pretty noisy. Every time car goes over, it makes that kind of clashing sound. Similar to the point David brought up before about making up speed, that's also true for speed bumps. So it's, and again, what you're referring to is more of like, an elevated crosswalk, which is slightly different, but has some of those same drawbacks. Yeah, I think it's not a tool that we've really implemented around town, kind of because of some of those drawbacks. The common feedback from people on speed bumps or any sort of raised vehicular device like that is that they're all for them, but not in front of their house. And that was kind of the feedback we heard at some of the earlier meetings. But I think, from a crossing standpoint, from an overall speed standpoint, these measures are going to really improve and get us more than to a reasonable level. Obviously we can do all sorts of data, but we did run several sets, and it wasn't so much that the speeds were illegal, but that they were just, not as ideal for the neighborhood. And so again, the speed bump would be more of a consideration when you have those, average speeds higher, 5+ miles over the speed limit, which isn't the case for this location.
Yeah, and RJ, I'll add a couple more things too. Raising the intersection of the crosswalk or providing a speed hump, that's called a vertical deflection, and that's those are more and more becoming frowned upon because of paramedics, the patient in the back, or other reasons. It also makes noise, the vehicle suspension going up and down, so that it is a noise issue. But we're convinced with the options we have here with the curb bulbs, especially around a corner, we can kind of choke the curve, and that is a proven measure to slow down traffic.
Good question, though. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to give any comments or ask any questions? Go ahead, Susan.
Well, I was just looking at the Google Maps, and Yvonne's, I can't even see her bedroom window because there's a very large bush in front of it. And so I don't think people are going to look into her. I know there's a sound issue, but I think the main thing that's the most important here is the safety of the children, the connecting the neighborhood, and for the people who are in order to visit other people in the neighborhood, we'd have to go through two crosswalks instead of one. And I think we have to decide what's more important. Kids' safety and adults.
Yeah, so just illustrating that one of those comments, right? For people coming from kind of the inner part, say Granada or Paloma, if they're going to the bus stop or whatnot, it's one crosswalk versus, I guess, two here. So that's kind of what Susan was saying there.
Yeah, but both options are safe, and that's all we're after is how do we slow down traffic on El Camino? They're both safe. The question is do we think about convenience for a few families here down the street, or we think about really what the impact it is for the house that has to take it all up? And really, is this property that we're living in?
The other thing is, have you been walking down to El Camino? Because I'm sure you'll be able to see our windows. The bush, when you look at the Google map, that was years ago. I mean, you know, all I need to do is just get up on my bed, stand up, and I'll be able to see straight out, right out there on the crosswalk, if that's where it's gonna be.
Well, you could grow your bushes a little higher.
Oh, okay. I appreciate for that comment.
It's a tough situation, and you know this is a tough one because in the last 10 years we don't really have any issues around here. We do know that people are driving way too fast, and so it is a tough conversation to have. It's about convenience versus impact, and you know I would really appreciate some support from neighbors because it's hard to live here. For 10 years, we don't have any issues. And now this major construction in El Camino. And that's the reason why we do have to voice our opinion. And I know it's not comfortable, but nobody's advocating for me. I need to advocate for myself and my family who has to live here.
So yeah, I'm just gonna add one quick note and then pass it off to Bobby, who has his hand raised. But so yeah, as far as I can tell, these would both meet safety standards. But if I'm looking at this and you're asking me which one has better sight lines, it's the southern crossing, and then it also has that benefit of the potential of one crossing versus two. So if in the light of trying to put the most ideal crossing location, that is kind of where I land. Go ahead, Bobby.
Would you mind pulling those diagrams up again and just highlighting which one's the south and which one's the north? I'm
happy to leave these up if that's what people prefer. So yeah, I'm
so
calling
left or right.
Right hand side is what I'm calling south. The
south. Okay.
The left hand side is what I'm calling the north crossing.
Okay. Do you guys have any data on how many people cross that on a given week or day versus a car that goes by? I know you can measure the cars by that little strip. I'm just curious if you know how much actual foot traffic would be going.
Yeah, we'd have to likely either set up cameras or have someone out there in person kind of counting them manually. We haven't gone through that effort.
Yeah. It's tough. It's tough for me because I want to be a good neighbor to Yvonne and Tony. I also am very concerned about safety with my children. What would you mind? I know there's a diagram again. Would you mind pulling it up? Why the southern one is considered safer?
Yeah, well, I'll bring the sight distance one you're referring to, and then again, I think the other con was the potential for. I mean,
it's like, so the reason, again, sorry to interrupt, we brought up stop signs, right? We brought up speed bumps, and certain civil codes
Mhm.
are guiding us a certain direction.
Yep.
Like if that's the standard, then what civil code guides us for the direction between north and south? And that would essentially be the way I would go. But let's just pass it to David. Could you walk me through these yellow lines?
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Why there are two of them on either side?
Sure. Yeah. Let me see if I can. I can't quite annotate.
I can annotate for you.
Super. All right. So where the little hand is right now, that's as if you were a driver going northbound on El Camino. Okay.
Okay.
And this diagram is showing crosswalk at both locations, but it's kind of superimposing both options together. All right. So what this is showing is the first line on the bottom is the sight line to the south side crosswalk, if that was in place. Okay. And then the second line is from that same driver where they see the pedestrian stepping off a curb if the pedestrian is using the northern crosswalk. Again, assuming there's no car parked by the driveway, right? So those are just showing the available sight lines, and we need at least 150 feet. So a car, if someone's paying attention, can come to a complete stop without hitting somebody. So that's what RJ is showing here, is what our available sight lines are. So we have a similar effect, for somebody going southbound in El Camino, right? These are just showing the sight lines from one point on the roadway to show that they're both meeting the minimum desirable. I do think I do agree with RJ that the southern one has better sight lines, because especially for the northbound vehicles, because if there is a car, parked in that green zone between the two driveways, that could block the northern the visibility to the northern crosswalk. Especially for a car that might be a little bit further to the south. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Okay. I guess my final question would be, are we removing the stop sign from the southbound traffic down from El Camino?
Yeah, this is, we spent a lot of time looking at traffic out here, and I've never seen a three-legged intersection with each leg at 120 degrees where one is not controlled by anything, one is controlled by yield, and one is stop sign controlled. So what we're trying to do is make it a little bit more uniform here with high visibility crosswalks and choking the, El Camino, and having that be the throughway, but making Estrada, instead of yield controlled, make it a stop sign controlled, like a most, cross street, low volume cross street should be. So that's the intent.
Okay. Is there a stop sign there now?
Yes.
No, the stop sign is for southbound El Camino. So I'm not sure about the history out here, but it's one of everything going on at this intersection.
Yeah,
just to be clear, we're taking that away in in both proposals.
Yeah. So that was added circa, 1950 through a resolution.
1950.
That stop sign is the only thing slowing traffic down coming off of Paradise Drive.
Right. So, that's why we've implemented these other strategies, these edge lines, the narrowing of here, the yield, sharp teeth, we have the crosswalk. Those are all gonna counterbalance and overall reduce speeds. And I drive this frequently. My son goes to daycare down the street. I've seen.
But are you ever late to picking up your kid? And have you ever floored it down El Camino?
I don't speed through here. Absolutely not. But
every day at 4:45, it's about to start.
I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying this has confusion on this intersection, the way it currently has the stop sign there. I've just seen it way too many times. It's not warranted and not doesn't.
Okay,
mean.
there's three other people waiting to speak. I disagree with putting the stop sign on the least trafficked lane.
Go ahead, Emily.
Hey, so as I previewed you, RJ, I actually have to jump off. I just wanted to mention sort of one thing. So I've been at this for a couple of years now with Peter Brown and traffic studies. Like, this is near and dear. And for me, it it was a very easy project as far as my motivation, safety, connecting the neighborhoods. It's only now become complicated and troubling for me because Yvonne and Tony are not only just my neighbors, but are good neighbors. And I don't like that, you know, I heard Yvonne say she doesn't feel like anybody's supporting her, standing up for her. And so before I have to jet, and I'm so sorry I do, I just wanted to say I actually am really concerned that, you know, that this has an impact and whatnot. I'm not quite sure what to do with it yet. You know, I think it's data driven and safety driven and whatnot. But before I jetted, I just wanted to say that I do support them and I hear their concerns, and I think I think that they're valid. But so anyway, Yvonne and Tony, I just wanted to make sure that, because I heard you say that you didn't think anybody was supporting you. I support you. I think you're wonderful neighbors. And this has been the hardest part of this, actually, this project, is suddenly realizing that, you know, this is causing some negative consternations for my dear neighbors. But I'm looking at this and I'm seeing the safety considerations, and that's powerful as well to me. So, and I'm sorry to everybody else on the call that I have to jet, but I'll listen to the recording and happy to keep the dialogue open, and really appreciate David and RJ's time as well. So with that, I gotta go, guys.
Okay, I'm gonna go to John next. I don't think he's had a chance to speak. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, so, you know, I can see why the south option seems like the better option, but I agree with Emily that I don't want to upset Yvonne. I understand the concerns. And obviously we as neighbors could maybe come together and try and help with some solution of helping with planting or something else. But I wondered whether you guys, in your experience, you must have come across similar situations, and if there are any options in terms of how you can mitigate for noise or for sight lines into people's homes at crosswalks.
Well, so there was a comment earlier that from Yvonne, maybe you can clarify. There was something about a bumping sound. I wasn't really sure what that was referring to. You know, the only thing I could think of sound wise would be people walking and where they cross perhaps. But we put these in at intersections all over town. We had one project alone last summer where we put in, I think it was 65 curb ramps. So this isn't a unique situation to Yvonne and Tony, and I'm just trying to be, you know, upfront and honest. We put these, you know, ramps in and bulb outs in all over the place. So especially, you know, in particular at intersections. So just thought I'd add that, but I don't know if you want to clarify, Yvonne, what the bumping sound you're referring to was.
It's right here. The ADA is a yellow bump, right? So you cross there or bike here or wheelchair goes through there, you hear noise. And on my window is just right here.
Yeah, so I would say perhaps if you had a wheelchair go over that with some hard tires, but I don't believe that's the case for a bike or a pedestrian.
It's a crosswalk. Kids will hang out there. That's where people mingle and stop by.
Okay, yeah, so that part of the argument, I'm not gonna, I mean, we're all humans and understand, you know, how talking is, but yeah, I just, the bumping part, I wasn't fully grasping, but.
And also, it's just a straight line of sight. That's all I need to do. Just maybe I sit straight up on bed. I'd be able to see who's crossing. I'd be able to see pretty much the whole walk from one side to the other side. So, I mean, for privacy wise, I mean, for not just for me, for the people who crosswalk as well, for the pedestrian as well, for the kids who want to walk across as well. Do they want somebody to just, you know, stand right in the window over there and be able to see everything they do, you know, or anytime? And so, I mean, it's just for my privacy right now. I concerned with my privacy. I also concerned with the privacy of the pedestrians themselves. So I'm not sure how.
I think I'm okay if I'm crossing a crosswalk to think that people are looking at me.
John, any more thoughts, or do we want to, or can I move on to Shiva?
No, you can move on. Thanks.
Okay, Shiva, please.
So I don't personally know Tony and Yvonne, but they seem really nice. And I completely understand, if that was our house, I would have a lot of the same concerns. We are down further south on 38, and we're over by the school. And as you mentioned, RJ, people are whipping in and out of that school. And so another consideration for me is that if that crosswalk is on the southern side, it'll slow down traffic further down the street. And I think that that could have a huge impact as far as calming down the traffic over by the school.
Thank you.
Did I just clarify that you mentioned that if the crosswalk was on the southern side, it slow the traffic farther down on your end than the northern crosswalk? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
I think if people are going to slow down, they're slowing down closer to the school. And so, it'll take them a while to pick up speeds again.
We're talking only a few feet different, right?
Yeah, it's a few feet difference, but I mean, it's a pretty short street and people accelerate pretty quickly.
I think we should let everyone provide their comments, and if it's only a few feet, then that argument can go multiple ways. I think Bennett, is your hand. You want to add another comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to echo that concern of the noise. I'm not sure if, David, you've done any research on the noise impact this would have. I would imagine that the slower speeds for motor traffic would reduce tire noise going through that intersection. And so it would reduce overall noise. But I think if we want to address the noise concern, maybe we should conduct some research on whether or not the intersection reconstruction would increase or decrease the noise.
Bennett, two things on that. I'm not aware of noise through the yellow truncated domes. I would echo what RJ says. I do think removal of the stop sign along southbound El Camino will actually help reduce some of the noise, the stopping and going, deceleration, acceleration through the intersection, which is that's a major route compared to Estrada. So I think there'll be an overall reduction in daily noise.
Great. Yeah, Ben, I appreciate the comment, and I know obviously we could study all sorts of things in great detail, but I kind of reserve those for really unique situations, and really I'm struggling with that, just given this is kind of such a common thing that we install. It might be unique to this neighborhood, but we really do put these types of crosswalks and bulb outs and curb ramps all over town. And 10 years from now, every intersection will have this exact same thing. It's basically been mandated by the American Disabilities Act of 1990. So it's just a matter of time. But yeah, if there was obviously when you get into those vertical features, speed humps and other things, that becomes a more unique circumstance. And I think that's where, those things might be considered. Or if we had, a really heavy volume pedestrian thing, then maybe that's a discussion. But I think this is a very common on those kind of areas. But I appreciate the brainstorming. I do. Anyone else that would like to?
One more comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
On the removal of the stop sign
Mm-hmm.
For traffic coming onto Estrada, I hope I'm pleasantly surprised with the slowdown in speed. Like that, again, I'll echo, that's the only thing slowing traffic down coming directly where I would cross the street, north or south. What if you're wrong? Like, is there any sort of post-installation study that occurs where, traffic actually isn't slowing down, we should put that stop sign back? Is there any sort of like mitigating look back after these things are installed?
Yeah, and
that's my question. Thank you.
Yeah, was that Bobby? I'm assuming so. Yeah, we're happy to.
Correct.
Yeah, we're happy to revisit the speeds post construction, but I do want to clarify it isn't. It might be one measure in place today, but again, we're really putting, the engineering behind it is really this narrowed lane, which is proven to reduce speeds. It's the bulb outs themselves narrowing vehicles and kind of channelizing drivers. It slows people down. It's some of these yield features. It's just just having the crosswalk, the visible crossing that kind of we've all kind of been trained to kind of perk up when we see crosswalks. So there's more than one measure going in for the one measure that's coming out. And but yeah, happy to look at that, and it doesn't preclude it from the future should it be warranted in the future. But we think this is a solid design, and we're happy to monitor after, but we think it's going to be a successful one.
Will there be flashy signal lights, like press the button so you can walk?
No.
Flashes movement?
So as proposed, no, we don't have flashing beacons, is what we call them. But obviously that would be another discussion for obvious reasons. But no, they're not proposed in this project at this location.
Big thank you to everyone in the neighborhood for not parking on the sidewalks. Really appreciate the response to my feedback. Thank you.
Okay.
So I'd like to say something.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nancy. Sorry, I didn't see your hand up.
Hi. So I'm going to put my 2 cents into this. I have no children. So I'm coming from a different standpoint. I'm coming from a homeowner standpoint, and I'd actually like to back Yvonne and Tony, because this is a major impact to them. And to me, looking at the northern crosswalk, it feels safer because it's not as wide. You've got the barriers on either side, so the kids aren't out in the street as long. Whereas in the southern crosswalk, it feels to me like they're in the sidewalk. I mean, they're in the street for a few steps longer, which could ultimately cause an impact. That's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Is that a hand up, Susan?
Actually, I just measured it on my screen and it seemed the same, but I'm still concerned because that sight line assumes that, like right now, there's a car parked in the legal parking space that has a, what do you call it, those pocket things on top, those extra storage. And a driver has to be almost to the intersection before they can see the northern crosswalk. And as far as the 2 crosswalks, it seems like the northern crosswalk, the voices are going to carry the same as from the southern crosswalk, because they're both, I mean, you're talking about a little bit, but right now that sight line has to, when you're in front of Emily's driveway, is the first time you'll be able to see a kid stepping off that. If there's no car parked actually right there where it shows the sight line is going across the green space where a car would be. You see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Yeah, you're going across the parking space. That sight line is assuming there's no car parked there. Because I went down there and I took a picture of it and I looked at it and I thought, gosh, nobody can see that. Nobody could see a kid until they're right up on it. And it's so much easier to see the southern crosswalk. And that's I think the biggest thing is the safety of kids. Because I guess I have kids. My kids grew up here. My grandkids are growing up here. And I would not want any kid to get hit or hurt in any way.
I second.
We all agree. We all have kids in this block. But the city already said both options are good to them. It's really neighbor to neighbor what that impact is. I don't think the town is taking a position on it because they said both are good options to slow down traffic.
But I think both of the experts here did say that they thought the south option was better.
Yeah, they mentioned to me that they will not be involved in terms of where it is a neighbor to neighbor conversation in terms of how does it impact the houses that are directly impacted by this? And we're the only house that's directly impacted by this.
So I'm gonna just clarify, right? So, you know, both options meet a reasonable standard. So we can, as a town, support either. If you are asking me which one has better sight lines, I'm gravitating, you know, if we're trying to get the optimum, I am saying the south. But again, they're both reasonable designs and the town could support both.
I'll add one more thing as a traffic engineer that's been working on this. Both crosswalks, either crosswalk would be the exact same length. So one is not longer or shorter than the other. And as RJ mentioned, both designs would provide adequate or acceptable, I should say, sight distance from both directions. The southern crosswalk would provide additional sight distance for northbound vehicle. So that helps.
No, I mean, I'm all for a sidewalk or a crosswalk. It's just I'm hoping my house wasn't located exactly where you want to put a southern sidewalk. And then like Nancy said is, hey, 10 years ago, we didn't have any of this issue when we bought the house. So of course we do. From a landowner or a home ownership, we got to think about that. And also, you know, both of them are good options. The question is, what impact does it have on the people who have to live right across from a crosswalk? That's my takeaway here is both options are good options and it's something that we should do after 10 years. But the impact to us is severely great versus anybody else on this call.
Okay, so a little bit about, I think where process, because I don't know that we have a clear-cut answer here. Well, Lorraine, I don't know if you have, talking to my staff member, we have one other person on as an attendee, and I'm unable to bring that person over.
I've tried to add him. I don't know if he just didn't accept it and he wanted to stay on as an attendee, but I did it like 4 times.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, great. You know, I think the dialogue's important. I think it's great that we all really, you know, we've brought more information to the table today, and I think we've also heard from many of the residents and neighbors here today in more detail. I think really at this point, I'm not sure how much more a follow-up meeting is going to do on this particular subject, but what I really do want to have is some email comments from folks on this call and or others, because I think that's really going to just give the town the direction that it needs to kind of determine what the consensus is here. So let me put, let's see. I'm going to put my email as an answer to the most current question in the dialogue. So it's rsuokko@tcmmail.org. Actually, I'll put it in my as my name here as well. And yeah, I'd like if everyone could get their thoughts and comments, you know, preferably in the next, you know, week would be nice. Kind of where you stand on the southern crossing versus the northern crossing. And hopefully there'll be some consensus there. Unless anyone has anything else on that, the only other item that we narrowed down slightly, ever so slightly last time, but was just kind of on some of the potential aesthetic treatments. Show those really quickly. So we had 3 options last time. One was a kind of cobblestone was the third option, and I think no one took a liking to that. These are pavers that we installed over on Tamil Vista. This is a treatment we call seeded concrete. And so also looking for thoughts and feedback on which of those you prefer. Those are kind of somewhat common ones we do around town. So we'd like to keep it somewhat in that palette versus picking something obscure that maybe gets discontinued in a couple of years and we can never find and replace it should something get damaged. But with that,
Can you provide your email address again, please?
yeah, so if you can see my video image right here, I've placed it as my name card there. And yeah, ideally in the next week, provide some comments. And it's not limited to just people on this call. You know, I think not everyone can make it, and I'm sure people are working. So, you know, but yeah, the more email comments, the better. Okay, great. I don't know if Bobby's hand is still up from before, but I see one last hand. But otherwise, think that is, I think it was a productive meeting, and you know, I'm glad we were all able to dive into it further, and I appreciate everyone's comments and questions, and look forward to hearing emails from folks. And unless anyone has anything else to add, I think that's a wrap, and we'll sign off and wait and see. Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for taking the time.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, not just today, but all the other meetings. You know, I appreciate it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, everyone.